This week on Not Just Another Sex Podcast.
I'm a huge advocate for being a new image or a change maker in this field of what therapists look like. Because when I was coming up, there weren't people who looked like me on TV or in media. You know what I mean? We didn't have social media, so I couldn't connect with I didn't know what I had never seen a black therapist. The earliest image I had was Dr. Phil on Teen Mom, right? And I was like, that's what I want to do, and I want to be that for my people or whatever. And that's what always has driven me into this work.
Hey, sugar. I feel like there are so many different things that I need to learn as an adult. I'm this nasty on a regular day, like on a Tuesday. I am your host, Samaya Burton, and don't worry, it's not just another sex podcast. Welcome back to Not Just Another Sex Podcast. My name is Samaya, and I'm your host, and I'm super excited for today's episode. But before we get into it, I have one of these reviews to read to you guys because you guys are listening to me, and you're dropping them like I'm asking, which I really do appreciate. So this one says, we need more solo episodes from Miss Whitney Gianna. She says, I absolutely enjoyed the solo episode. It's like you were speaking directly to me. We need more solo episodes. Hand claps. Thank you for being so transparent. We love you, sis. Signed, Whitney Gianna, a.k.a. Famu Lee. I know that's right, honey. Thank you so much. You guys know I'm a huge words of affirmation girl, and I told you I was very nervous about starting the solos with Samaya. So if you guys have not caught up, make sure that you tap into either the Patreon or the wherever you listen to the podcast, because now I do upload solo episodes, and it was really because there are other things that I want to talk to you guys about that I'm going through and I'm working through in real time. And sometimes when you guys are getting the episodes, sometimes you're getting them, 5 or 6 weeks later, or those are things that I have already worked through. I have processed. I done went to therapy about, and now I'm sharing with you. But on the solo episodes, these are the things I'm going through like yesterday, or it's like, damn, I ain't gonna lie to you, I struggled recording today or whatever. So if you're looking to connect with me, hear more about my story, then this is a great way to do it. And then the visuals are always uploaded to Patreon for the solos with Samaya. So thank you so much for tuning in and just supporting, in all different types of ways. And really I think that's the part for me that really makes me grateful, is that you guys have been supporting every step of what this process looks like for me, even when I'm not even comfortable with what it looks like, and the fact that it keeps changing and growing and all of that, and just you guys saving space for me to be myself as I figure it out. I really appreciate that more than you guys know. So if you have not rated and reviewed the podcast and you're listening right now, please do so. It means more than you guys know. The show is $0.00 to you guys, but telling a friend, sharing it, rating and reviewing, it does a lot. But now let's get into this amazing episode that we have for you guys today. So I have Miss Brittany Rogers with us today. Therapist, goon, Leo, and the owner of Be the Change Therapeutic Services with us today. And please introduce yourself to the folks.
Hey, y'all. Look, I'm just so happy to be here. I feel like, when you go on different podcasts, you never really know the type of, like, everybody doesn't have the same audience. And I feel like you got a really good audience. And that feels like good to speak to people, like speak on people's platforms who have good audiences. Because, baby, everybody don't have those.
These are the facts.
So welcome. Look, I'm here too. Like, it's my show. Welcome,
it's
guys.
our show today.
Well, no, I'm Brittany. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified alcohol and drug counselor. I'm an author of my little book right here, The Things I Wish I Knew, A Millennial's Guide to Learning the Mental and Emotional Concepts that the school system and our parents didn't teach us. I do a little bit of YouTube, Keeping It a Buck with B, where I talk about mental health, relationships, dating dynamics, sex, trending topics, you name it, I'll talk about it. And I'm newly into like the podcast guest speaker role. Like, so I'm really loving that people value what I have to say and they want to work with me and vibe and drop these gems.
Absolutely. So I found you from tonight's conversations, and I believe we did some episodes together, or were there at the same time together. Yeah. But also I went back and I watched your old ones, and for me, I think I have a thing for like those women that have that little aggression on them. I don't know if it's that Midwest thing.
Chicago stunt.
I know I'm from St. Louis, so it's like it just. it's straight to the point. I don't like having to guess what people thinking or what's going on, you know. And when we went to Chicago and we did the show together, you just took such good care of us, and you didn't have to, and just was like, oh, y'all can ride with me. I'll take you to get something to eat. Like, here, let me take you where to go. And I just really, really appreciated that hospitality. And so, however I can support, but you've already done the work. So it's not a little book, big purr. And I really had this show is definitely about bringing what people do and a part of telling my life and finding out I needed therapy was the biggest problem. Yeah. You know, and I feel like your book starts at the beginning. And so I think that is very important when people are like, well, I've never had therapy, or not really understanding what it can do. A lot of times it's because we don't think that anything's wrong with us. We know we have some flaws, but we don't realize like these things can change. You can undo that shit, you know? Yeah. And to your point, yes, we have an amazing following. Like everybody that's come on this show like has been very transparent, been very honest, and I think that that captivates people, and I think that that's what people need to hear. Like, they're not trying to hear the end game. They want to hear what it's like now.
Going through the trenches of it all. And actually, like, now that I've been sitting here thinking about this for a little while, I'm pretty sure at a certain point I had a client who was very much into a lot of different types of like content, but more so like things regarding like sex or like sex positivity, women empowerment. And I'm pretty sure when I asked, I was like, what's some of the pages that you follow? I'm pretty sure she sent me sexual essentials. Yeah. So cause I remember like before we did tonight's conversation, I was like, oh, I think like that's one of the pages that she sent me, and I paired it with your face. And so like that came to me. So this is just such a full circle moment. Yeah. That I really appreciate.
Look at y'all, Brittany a Leo. Y'all know I'm a Leo rising. So it's just, I love big purr energy, okay? So you are walking into this episode with me today. I'm going to make this announcement super quick because I know I've already been gone for a while, but I had to make sure that you guys know. These are the final 10 episodes of Not Just Another Sex Podcast, which I announced last week. If you missed that message, don't worry. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. After you enjoy these 10 episodes, please make sure that you tune in for that final episode, because that is where I'm going to explain everything, why I came to this decision, why I'm selling the content house, and just everything that has happened while I've been away. But let's just stay tuned, watch these episodes, and I'll meet you there when this comes out. Next, my entire inventory is being cleared out. Everything, all prices have been slashed, and this will be the final sale. So if you have not got your hands on any yoni oil, wash, or the thigh high socks, please make sure that you click the link below. Take advantage of these low sales, because this will be the last time you'll be able to get those items from me. Next, if you missed me over these last 6 to 9 months or however long it's been, that is a surefire way for me to know that you're not a part of my Patreon community, because they never missed a beat with me. I meet with my community every week over there, and we're talking about topics similar to the podcast. We're diving in deeper, and we're working on your personal issues, but also like with accountability, and you hearing more about my life and how I'm trying to fix it as well. We do that on Sundays, and then as of 2025, we actually added another day called Wet Wednesdays, where we are actually diving into intimate discussions based off of my entire course catalog from intimate education. So all of my intimate education videos are still over there on Patreon, and we're combing through each one of those one by one, doing challenges, applying different knowledge, teaching, and so much more on Wednesday nights. It's really been amazing, so I hope that you tune in. Last but not least, the 2023 art exhibit, or the first Not Just Another Sex Podcast live show, is finally out. That means that art exhibit 2021, 2022, and 2023 are all being housed over there on my Patreon. The final one actually is a 3-part series, the first one being the panel discussion, the second being the performances, and the third being the BTS episode about why the art exhibit is no longer happening and will not be returning. I love you guys so much, and I cannot wait to the final episode so that way I can make sure that I do not leave you guys hanging, give you all the details about what's going on. And last but not least, if you're wondering where I am, this is my home. I am a van lifer, so make sure that you follow the Charlie Man Cafe so that way you guys can stay tuned to where I'm going, what I'm doing, and so much more. All right, I love y'all. Now back to the show. All right, so we're starting off with the adult tip of the day. So the adult tip of the day is because, you look up and you like, I'm the grown up in the room, meaning people expecting you to be responsible. People expecting you to be emotionally regulated, not be going off and whining and throwing temper tantrums and shit like that, but amongst other things. And I think that sometimes it could be overwhelming to realize that now you have to have it all figured out. And so we just try to break adulting down into like a 5-minute segment or something like that, something that you could put in your back pocket that can just help you to just ground yourself real quick or be like, you know what, I do need to work there, bring it top of mind, you know? So this one comes from Therapy with Abby. It came across my timeline and I liked it. It said New Year's intentions for healthier relationships. And it said, I will not be passive aggressive when people aren't meeting my unspoken needs. I'm gonna read that one again for y'all.
Okay.
I will not be passive aggressive when people aren't meeting my unspoken needs. I will allow other people to have difficult emotions without trying to fix them. Samaya, did you hear yourself? I will allow other people to have difficult emotions without trying to fix them. I will use my words and ask for what I need instead of hoping that people will read my mind. I will not wait until I'm overwhelmed with anger or resentment to share how I feel. Y'all want me to keep going? Y'all getting what we're on today? Okay. I will remember that most of the time people want empathy, not advice. I will accept that I cannot force or convince people to change. I will not put myself under pressure to have perfect relationships all the time. I will face the difficult conversations I avoid having, even if they're uncomfortable. That was long as hell.
Abby, you stole all the tips.
Abby,
Abby
was getting to it. Abby was getting to it. And I know that was kind of long for an adult tip of the day, you guys, but that's the part. If you do those things, you realize therapy can help you with that. That's what therapy can do.
And it was such an expansive list where, like, if the maybe number 1 wasn't for you, but number 3 probably was. Number 5 most likely was, right? Like, so
at least 2.
I love a message where, like, this part may not be for you, but it was something in there that in that meat and bones that you could pick out and you can apply to your life.
Absolutely. What I will say is that a lot of times we think that, like, okay, all of that don't apply to me, so it's fine. Or like, oh, I went to therapy, so it's going to fix all those things. I ain't gonna lie to you. You can go to therapy all your life and still probably do some of these things.
Oh, absolutely.
But it does help you to recognize that you're doing it, learn how to apologize, learn how to navigate through it so you can recognize it and avoid some of those, little bombs more often and recognize it and communicate better and be more vulnerable with your partner. Let them know, I have a bad habit of doing this, or, and your friends or whatever, So just going to therapy can help you be more aware and sometimes help you work out those things that you're doing with someone else in a safe space, right? You're going to still feel all those things, but how you decide to act on it, is your responsibility.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, before we kind of switch gears,
for sure,
that I think many people don't realize is how much that you endure or you think about that you never say out loud. And a lot of the times when people enter the therapeutic space, that's the first time they're hearing themselves recollect something out loud versus what they've internalized it to be, how they've thought about it or ruminated over it. And typically that's half the battle. Like, once I said this out loud, things get to clicking, neurons get to connecting, and then I really get a chance to understand, like, how positive or how negative that is in my life, or how affected I am by it, or like, now I have not only myself putting this into perspective, but somebody else has put it into perspective as well. So that is sometimes like a very small but life-changing thing for a lot of people. It's like, I've never said this out loud before, and doing it sometimes gives it a lot of power or brings a lot of discomfort up to realize, like, this is what I've been dealing with. Or this is what I haven't necessarily confronted. So
I think that's really real. It's so crazy because I've always felt like bewildered, for lack of better words, whenever I say something out loud and it breaks me down. And it's like, I've been thinking it, and I know I've been thinking it. So it's like, you said that, like, some people don't even realize what they haven't been saying.
Or the emotion tied to the emotion really tied to it, now that I have to acknowledge this out loud.
And I haven't shared it with anybody. Like, I knew it. I'm definitely conscious of it. But sometimes when you're talking to yourself, you do it in your head. But when you say the words out loud, sometimes that should break you down. And it's like, no, it's not okay. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's something that has been done to you, something that you've done to somebody else, or, whatever. And what I found is that talking helps things go away for me. And so that's why you can't shut me up now. I know what it feels like to hold all those things inside.
In.
And it's not really worth the pain. So I'd rather just somebody not like me because I talk too much than to me hold it in.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So so next we have the Twitter Talk. So Twitter Talk is where we pay homage to Black Twitter, because Black Twitter is all things
everything
but a culture. Yeah. Okay. Even when they changed the name to X, we still was calling it Black Twitter. And even it was over on Instagram, it was like, oh, you saw what they said on Twitter. Why? Because it just circulates. And today's Twitter Talk is the overuse of incorrect terms. When it What do you think are the most overused terms when it comes to like this online, you know, thing? And it's so crazy because a lot of people be overusing terms and they've never went to therapy.
And that what pisses me off. More than anything. Like, babe, you're okay. So we all know narcissistic. That's probably like ding, 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 number one.
Why do you think people overuse that one so much? Like, what are they confusing it for?
People want to find a label for something that explains their experience and their pain. And
say that again.
People cling to the word narcissist or any other like big psych word because they are looking for something that will explain their experience or their pain, right? So it's not enough to say this person exhibited abusive behavior towards me, or this person was abusive towards me or manipulative towards me. You feel like for some reason you have to give them a label that paints them to be in the most like negative light that you could possibly think of. Because if I go online and I look and I can identify these traits and say that this person is a narcissist, then I feel validated in what I've been through, knowing that like this person is something wrong with them.
Yeah.
I can put the blame on someone else, right? And one thing that I try to encourage people to do, because now it is such a thing where sometimes my clients will drop that word and I'm like, well, what about it makes them narcissists? Because the thing about it is we all have narcissistic characteristics and tendencies, right? But somebody being like diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, number one, it doesn't happen as much as people would like to think, because a lot of narcissists who are truly narcissists don't go to therapy, or they do go to therapy and they mask their symptoms very well, right? So without going too far off topic, I think that people look for things that explain, you know, what they've been dealing with through. And they feel like they need to put blame on it. But I tell people, like, your experience is valid enough. You saying that like I was abused, or I was treated disgustingly, or I was disappointed by this person, or like, even if we need to go back to the term crazy, his ass was crazy. I'd rather you do that, like, let that be it, than you trying to pathologize somebody because you think it validates your pain. You don't have to do that. Your pain is valid and your experience is valid on its own.
Okay, so narcissistic. What's the other one?
Gaslighting.
You think so?
That's
one that I definitely use.
Right, and the thing
you
about
gaslight me.
Right. So the thing about it is, like, people are becoming more educated on mental health related terms. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing an uptick in people using some of these words, because the knowledge is spreading faster and more efficiently than it's ever spread, because we have social media and people bringing these things. I just want people to be sure that they're using it in the correct context, right? Like, how much research have you actually done on the word gaslighting versus you just saw somebody else use it and now you just added it to your vocabulary. Sure. So when it comes to gaslighting, a big part of it is like intention that people miss, because we know that there is a clear difference between lying, being dishonest by omission, like all of these other variations of not being truthful, and gaslighting, where gaslighting, there has to be an intention to manipulate, to make you second guess what's going on, because it feeds the other person's narrative of what they need you to believe, right? So that's what I think sometimes people lack, is like somebody, it may on surface level come off as gaslighting because you believe in your truth, right? But that person may not be intentionally trying to manipulate you. A lot of the times people, especially I've seen this a lot when I work with couples, people just have two different variations of an experience. They have two different perspectives. So sometimes even with the way the brain works is your memory of something may even be completely different, right? So I think that's where the fine line kind of comes into play. Is like there are people that have the tendency to, if you want to lean into that narcissistic, manipulative, gaslight, like people who like live and breathe that as individuals, so you can point them out and be like, yeah, you want to stay far the hell away from them. Like, yes, okay, they know what, they have a tendency to know what they're doing, but that isn't the average person.
Yeah. I've also learned that people are people and they deflect. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes they're not ready to own their shit. To own it. And so they're like, no, it was this. So it might technically be gaslighting, but they might not be gaslighting you. Right. Like, Yeah. And I think that's difficult because it's like, I'm telling you that you're doing this and you're looking at me in my face and telling me that you're not, because really you're not ready to own your truth yet. Or you're scared to say, yeah, I didn't like that or whatever, and it's like, I'd rather put that in passive aggressive, you know what I mean? Like now you're trying to omit, things like that. I will say that when I try to call out like, hey, I'm telling you that you're doing this and you're telling me that you're not, and I'm proving to you that you're doing it and you still telling me, now it's only so long before I'm gonna prove it to you. I hate having to like prove what I'm saying,
bring out receipts and stuff. And that's something else about like the term or the experience of gaslighting. It really is it's not just something that somebody does one time. That would make them like manipulative. Like that's just the word would be used for that. Gaslighting is a series of seeds being sown of doubt. Like not just we had this one interaction. This is like you in an abusive relationship, mentally and emotionally, and this person is doing things to cause you to question your reality over, a period of time. That's when we really truly see the real depiction of what gaslighting is.
You know what is very difficult is that I love that the internet has opened up the fact that, because you can't always get to therapy. You know what I'm saying? And it's so many things you get to sometimes before you even get the opportunity to find a good therapist. Yeah. And so many health professionals online, these life coaches and that have no real credentials, no real studying behind them. They're internet therapists, right? They've never therapized nobody outside the internet a day in their life, and they're gaslighting people, they're manipulating people, they're taking, what I'm saying, they're using these words and building these platforms and things like that. And then also, I had an experience where I worked with someone and she offered life coach services and she ended up using like the information that I was giving her to try to like gaslight what I was saying or use the information that I shared about like where I needed to improve or things like that. And then when she would be wrong, she was like, well, you always do that.
Right. This is you why always you need do to that. XYZ
because of you always do that. You need to let your guard, like things like that. Unfortunately, I feel too much because now I'm like, what the fuck you talking about? Like, you can't tell me about me. Only I can, I can only tell me about me. And I think that's the thing. I think that, when you're healing, it's very important to make sure that you have a way to go back to being grounded, because otherwise you do take all of your thoughts from the therapist as well. Like if you go into a true counselor, a true therapist that has this study, and they're not going to think for you. Right. You know what I mean? So I just wanted, I love the fact that mental health is coming up. I do. But it's a lot of kinks that we got to work through when it comes to just overusing and misusing. I've been saying for a while,
like, mental health is trendy right now, right? Like, it's the trendiest it's ever been, from paraphernalia to people marketing themselves, mental health coaches, and, like, again, no real credentials, no schooling behind it. Like, I've had a lot of people who kind of delve into like the podcast media world and are really heavy into like the relationship content, and they'll ask me like, so how long did school take, or like what type of programs were you in? And typically when you tell people like what that process was and how long it took, they like, oh yeah, boo, like this wasn't no overnight. Like I went to undergrad to get the credentials to go to grad school to get the credentials to get my license. Like this was all a process. And the thing about it is, I even had a homie who was really like heavy. He lives and breathes his podcast and stuff. And he was one of the people that asked me about like going back to school and doing marriage and family counseling and things of that nature. And I had to tell him, I said, because you are used to doing podcasting in a way that is authentic to you, right? You don't have to limit yourself. You can say whatever comes to mind and people can take it or leave it. When you have letters and a license attached to your name,
You can't do that.
you can't do that. And unfortunately, what I've been seeing really recently is there are more therapists who are using their platforms, specifically on Twitter or on TikTok, where people are dragging them for doing things that aren't even unethical or speaking to things that aren't even unethical or irresponsible. They just don't like it. And then it ends up with those professionals getting harassed or getting fired, or their licenses being, like, people trying to report their licenses to the board because you disagree or you don't like what somebody said. So it's a very, like, hard teetering game that I even myself still have to, like, I work really hard on when I come and I want to be really authentic. But I also can't just say whatever the fuck come to my head because
I wanna be that Chicago girl.
Because right, like, you know, sometimes I want to get into the more raunchy subjects, but like, I have an image, you know, I have a brand, I have a license that is attached to my profession, and so we have to play that line, you know, that boundary very carefully. But I'm a huge advocate for being a new image or a change maker in this field of what therapists look like, because when I was coming up, there weren't people who looked like me on TV or in media, you know what I mean? We didn't have social media, so I couldn't connect with I didn't know what I had never seen a black therapist. The earliest image I had was Dr. Phil on Teen Mom, right? And I was like, that's what I want to do, and I want to be that for my people or whatever, and that's what always has driven me into this work. But because mental health has become so trendy now, it's more popular, everybody think they know everything, it's making it really hard to have your professional voice hold weight. And that's what I was telling my homie. He was like, yeah, I think if I get the credentials, then if I say these things about relationships, then people will respect it more. No, they won't.
Because it's still your opinion.
No, they won't. Like, people still gonna feel how they feel. They don't care. Like, at the end of the day, like, the people who love you and support you, they'll validate you. Like, when I dropped the video about somebody misusing the word narcissist, my people shared it like, yeah, this from a real mental health professional. This from a real therapist. They like to use it, but other people will still get in your comments and be like, I disagree.
With the fact.
Like, I don't care who you are. I disagree. Like, so it changes nothing. But it does feel good to know that I'm not just pulling shit out my ass. Yeah. You know, I worked really hard to get to where I am in my career, especially as a black woman.
Absolutely. I would love to know more about why you got into, like, the addiction side of things and kind of how you got started, because I know that I just adore the fact that it's you. I do, because it's just, it feels like home. Yeah. You know what I mean? It feels like home. It's something I can relate to, and it's someone that looks like me. It's somebody that's moved like me, like one of the girls. Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, I think that level of healing and understanding can make even friendships seem easier, because it's just like, damn, they really understand me. And it's just like, you know how many people actually understand you if you start dealing with people that have addressed their own problems. Right. And that's really what, you know, that's really what it is. Yeah. And I think also just changing the narrative of, like, I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like sometimes people don't want to be healed because they think they're going to be boring. They ain't going to have no sauce. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like,
they're used to existing in their dysfunction. So anything that isn't that dysfunction is, like, scary.
Yeah, or like lame. Like, you think like you're going to be healed and lame or whatever. And that's not true. Like, you one of the girls. So please just, you know, tell us how you got into this. And, you know, we're going to go from there.
I think I was always the friend people like to talk to, or like even strangers. And it's been like that since high school. That's like where my initial interest developed. And once, like I said, the images that I saw on TV were just like Dr. Phil and like all these, you know, it was Dr. Phil and Dr. Drew, right? These two white men, right? Like one who I think isn't even credentialed anymore, but like that's just all that was out there. And so once I kind of got into undergrad and I talked to my advisor about, like, I don't really want a doctorate and I don't want to do research. Like, I want to counsel people. And then he explained to me, like, oh, so you would go into a program for, they're licensed clinical professional counselors. And so this is what that path would look like. And then I managed to find I went to a grad school fair And there was a Chicago School of Professional Psychology, which is where my master's is from. And once I read their brochure, I was like, oh, this is it. Like when you feel like something is really aligned with what you've been like wanting to do. And that's just, I kind of just followed the steps really, like knowing that I wanted to be a face of mental health and therapy in the Black community, especially coming from Chicago, where we have a lot of neighborhoods that are underserved, knowing how stigmatized that mental health and therapy has been in the Black community for an extended period of time. Like we're just now breaking some of that down and getting to a space where we can openly talk about these things without caring or receiving as much judgment as before. And I knew I wanted to be a part of that because I knew that my people needed it.
For sure.
And ultimately, when I was in grad school, I was able to we were all able to pick concentrations. You could do child and adolescent, you could do trauma. We had a Latino mental health studies program. And then we had addictions. And I initially, and this is something I've never really talked about on a public platform, but like safe place, right? But no, both of my parents are 30-ish years in recovery. And so for a while I felt like the addiction route would have been too close to home, even though they were clean by the time they had me and got married. Like, so I don't even know that part of their life really fully. But I eventually leaned into that because I grew up going to NA meetings with them before I even knew what they were, you know, and I felt like there was a reason that kind of came full circle. And I've seen the work that, again, they aren't very public about it, which is why I'm not very public about it. But I've watched them devote story too. I've watched them devote their lives to being sponsors and helping other people in that area of their life. So I was like, I should learn more about this. Like, this is something that I'm already familiar with. So like, why not lean into that?
It's so crazy because as I sit here drinking my non-alcoholic wine, is that the truth is that I really be wanting people to understand, like, I don't think they realize like how fucked up I was, and that therapy really not undid it, but it gave me the tools to do the work, and that even just going to therapy doesn't necessarily fix things. But I still think that so many people are avoiding therapy because they actually don't think that they need it. They don't understand how much their life can change without it. Like, I also think that they're avoiding the work because it's painful. You know what I'm saying? It's
uncomfortable.
It's absolutely uncomfortable. It took so many levels of therapy for me to even unlock and get all the tools that I needed to really deal with all of my issues. I'm talking about from like EMDR, like psycho type therapies and, you know, regular everyday therapy and, you know, all these different types of things. And the truth is that if you can't recognize that you need it, then you can't ever start. You know what I mean? And I want people to hear it from someone that looks like them and sounds like them and say, that's actually not normal. And this is a sign that you need, that you need to get some help. What are some ways that, maybe the most common ways that you think that people ignore that they need therapy? Like, what are some of the, maybe like the key signs? Like, as soon as, like, maybe you meet somebody, you like, they're not in therapy, they're not working on themselves. Or like, you see something and you like, that, you know how you know if you're talking to somebody that like they have a secure attachment, or, you know, like what are some signs for you that, so that way if somebody listening like, damn, I do that mean I need therapy?
So I think anybody who has a natural aversion to the idea of therapy.
Well, that's a good one.
No, like seriously, whenever people get really defensive about it, and I'm not talking about somebody bringing it to you in a weaponization sort of way, which I try to deter people from doing. If they genuinely want somebody to go and talk to somebody and peel back some layers, right? But if, again, and we could put it in dating context. Whenever I'm vetting a guy, if we get to the therapy subject and I'm like, oh, have you ever been? Would you be open to going? And they try to play it's cool for other people because they know what I do, right? So they can't shit on it directly. But if they pull some like, oh, I think it's great for other people, I don't know if I would do it, I don't think I need it. I don't know, friend. Like, I think that we all need to have a certain level of openness when it comes to doing anything that would aid in your progression or in healing you didn't know that you needed. Because a lot of people, especially as adults now, we done spend so much of our life suppressing and repressing stuff.
Yeah.
For the sake of not having, because we just don't want to have to deal with it. Or we feel like we don't have the capacity to deal with it or the space to deal with it.
Sometimes you don't.
But shit creep up all the time.
Yeah.
And that's my main thing is like, as a therapist who's been in therapy for 8 years, I cannot have a significant other who is not at least willing to walk that journey on their own. Because another issue is like people will, and I'm going to get back to your question, but like
for sure,
the reason why it leads into a sort of dysfunctional process is like people are way more willing to do couples therapy, right? When it's time, when that relationship having trouble and you want to save it, then it's like, okay, let's go talk to the lady. Let's go talk to the lady. Okay, now you want to talk to the lady.
And guess what she gonna tell you? Y'all need individual therapy.
There are certain things you have to go and work on by yourself, and then we can come together and talk about what everybody learned about themselves. In couples therapy, it's so easy to point the finger about who's doing what. What are you doing? Yeah. And that is what individual therapy is going to help you learn. So that's just one piece of it. It's like if you just have some sense of resistance to it, you got to dig deep and figure out where that's coming from, because you won't even allow yourself to be open enough to say, hey, let me give this a try for a little while and see what happens before I just write it off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else.
I know one you said earlier.
What?
Okay, so you were saying that when you, because I was like, oh, this was a good one, and I forgot to write it down. It just came to me. You said on the couch. You were saying that when you dating and you feel like you keep getting the exact same situation over and over, like it's the same trick, different dog. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And then you going off now. They got something in common.
Yeah, you got to look within yourself. And sometimes, like what I will say is like, sometimes you can do the work and feel like you've done the work, and you know, as women, we get tired of like, oh, just love yourself and the man will come. Like, if you tell me that, what I'm on time, I'm like, you know, but sometimes I believe that, and this may be the spiritual part of me, that we don't get what we want or what we desire because there are still pieces of us that need addressing, right? And
you get into the spiritual tip of the day
now. Look, no, because that's really like that's one thing that if my clients, if they have some sense of spirituality, I love to bring that into the room, because
if it hasn't come yet, it's something that's
right. It's
not
natural
ready
for me, and it's certain things that I can only explain. I feel like sometimes through spirituality, because we go through so much shit in life that don't be making no sense. Where like something bigger than us has to exist. But no, absolutely, I feel like if I can't, if there were periods of time where I found myself in, like you said, same race, different pony, you know what I mean? Whatever the analogies we want to use for that, like there is something that we're missing. Yeah. And like I said, I think you can get to a point where like you can say, I've been in therapy and I'm still not like yielding the results that I want in certain areas of my life. Well, then sometimes we need different approaches. You know, I'm very big on not letting one therapeutic experience deter you from continuing to explore that realm. For sure. I love having clients.
Damn sure explore other niggas.
No, okay. I love having clients who've been with me maybe for like 2-3 years. Yeah. Like I'm getting to that point in my career now with some of the people I started with when I started doing private practice in 2020 full time, where they hit a point that was like, I think I want to go to somebody else. I think I want to try somebody else. I think I'm ready to discontinue, or I feel like, you know, I could use something different. And I love that for them, because that's not them. They're not leaving their therapeutic journey simply because they're ready to end their work with me, or they're ready to graduate from therapy with me. It's more so about like, I want to continue to explore, and different therapists will bring out different things within you. So
absolutely.
Don't let like whether it be a negative experience or feeling like, okay, yeah, I did this, I feel like I didn't. If you grew complacent in it, then it may be time to like pause, go back, try a different therapist, try a different modality. Like it's just so much to be explored.
You know, the other one for me is I want to know how you think about your parents or whoever brought you. I want to know what you think about them, because I think that one of the hardest things for me to accept was that you know, my parents made me. I am my parents, right? And not like or at least I am of my parents, right? And I like to say that I'm the best parts of them. You know what I'm saying? So it took so much for me to acknowledge that all of the bad habits, all the yelling, cursing, the way that they weren't emotionally regulated, going off when it wasn't appropriate, really just not having control of their anger issues. It was so normal to me that when I used to do it to other people, I was like, what are you talking about? My mama talked to me like this.
Right. No.
So I'm actually confused because you're telling me that my caregiver, my person, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you can't even, I'm confusion. Because what are you talking about? I actually don't understand. I don't know anything else, right?
Yeah.
And then it's also the realizing that if your parents taught it to you, you probably do it better. You probably do. If your mama used to cuss you out like this, you probably know how to curse her around.
Like, because you started younger than she did and learning that.
You didn't learn it. You've learned exactly what to do. So you've learned exactly how to do that to other people in the midst of trying to avoid them doing it to you first.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, what's your relationship with your parents? Like when people talk to me, sometimes, yes, I'm nervous to tell them the relationship with my parents because it's like they could literally be like, oh, no, this bitch gonna be fucked up. But also if you talk to me, you know, I talk about like, I get it, I understand. Like so you see like, okay, you have worked through all of this because I realized they can only meet me where they are. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what are you doing how do you heal from what they've done to you? And also if you can't acknowledge what they've done to you or you still not willing to admit that, you know, some of these things affected you, then you can't move on. You know?
Parental wounds are huge. When I tell you like 90% of my clientele are adults. And family dynamics comes up all the time. Because it is literally our very first relationship. And like you said, usually when we talk about, because this came from our question of like, how do you tell if somebody like could potentially need some therapy or how much work they've done on themselves in that realm of healing. And parents is always a giveaway. But what I like to, I try not to, because, you know, sometimes, especially on social media, they make that topic very black and white. You shouldn't date someone who has a poor relationship with their other parent or whatever the case may be. Yes. And I'm big on assigning sort of levels to that shit, right? Like,
I need all the details.
We got green, red flags, and yellow flags. And so parental issues for me in dating a guy, I would consider that a yellow flag because I know, based on my profession, the potential that it can of behavior that can bring about, right? Specifically that relationship with mom. But I'm not gonna write you off. I'm going to allow myself to get to know what work you've done on it. Yeah. Because there's so much beauty in being able to like see someone talk through how they've overcome or what they've worked through in regards to some of their pain or their trauma. And that tells me what type of person you are. As for me, like dating, people always like, how's it dating as a therapist? It's hard because
I know too much.
I need a certain level of emotional intelligence and sometimes even a step above what I'm capable of doing because I still get in my moments as a woman and with hormones and moods and all of that stuff. And I have to I'm good about like checking myself when I need to, but I need someone else who is aware enough of their own emotions and can be aware of mine as well. Where we don't get so conflated in them and we can, I hate to apply like, let's talk about it logically, like, no, but let's talk about it in a healthy communicative way. But I think that that's huge and being able to say like, yeah, I understood that I had problems with my parents and that's what we seeing a lot on social media. It's a lot of men in these comment sections, who have mommy issues and there are specific content creators who give a breeding ground almost for that projection to happen all the time instead of why did I feel the need to get online and make this very nasty derogatory comment about a woman who I don't know, who I've never known, instead of addressing what's within.
I wonder what's the right age to put your kids in therapy so they're not in therapy about you when they get older. But I feel like that's another topic for another day. I would like you to tell us about your book because a lot of people don't know where to find a therapist. Okay. And what I found is that the steps are almost always similar. Like now how you get into the door into therapy is could be a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, attachment styles. The book was really big for you.
Yeah.
But you really outlined, you know, so many things that haven't been discussed. And so I would love for you to talk about the book and how someone should apply it without, because it's not a replacement for counseling or therapy or anything like that, but how do they properly use the book so that way they can, you know, just find their footing and just, because I definitely think that everybody needs to go to therapy at least once.
Yeah.
At least once or twice. And at the end of the day, sometimes you're not working through nothing. Sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you and just you. And that can make you feel better.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
But please.
So the book came to me when I was working at a mental health facility, predominantly with white Caucasian women, mainly adults. And I was still it was probably like my second job, and after having like my degree, and I was doing a lot of group therapy, and they would just kind of let you find your niche. So one of my groups was relationship dynamics, and then I got to kind of create a curriculum around like that based on like the resources, the worksheets, all these things. And as I was doing those groups, I'm like, you kind of good at this, but also I'm thinking like, this is really good information. And you're figuring out how to deliver it to these women in a way that is digestible, it's relatable, it is fun to talk about, but it's also really insightful. And I felt like my community needed it. Yeah. And I'm like, we shouldn't have to go to treatment to learn these things or for it to be available to us. And so that's just
it's like this not difficult enough that you gotta like, oh, I gotta find a therapist for this. Some of this should have been kind of like given.
Again, I'm big on the fact that like now we have more social emotional learning happening in schools, but like this is stuff I wish there was a space for us to just take some of these concepts to talk about when we're young, right? Like that's one thing I think is great about the younger generation is so much of like the terminology and the language that they have to describe what they go through and what they experience. I didn't have that. I didn't realize that I was suffering from anxiety until I was in college, and I really didn't get a handle on it until I was in my early 20s, and that's something that has been debilitating for me.
Black women have not been allowed to have anxiety, be quiet, have social anxiety. We haven't been allowed to feel any, you know, certain things like just from our parents, like fix your face, or you know what I'm saying. And now you just chilling on all these emotions. They just sitting there suppressed, and so you not used to doing that. Like we literally as a black woman, if you sit there and you quiet in a room, people gonna say you have an attitude. They don't wonder if you have social anxiety or are you okay or anything like that. It's always negative. It's always you got an attitude or you emotional, and it's like I'm not doing nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I was back into that, I was doing these groups, and I'm like, man, I want to put this together in a way where like I can educate people, and more specifically like black people or younger people with references and examples and like things that I've learned throughout my own life that I feel like can really provide great conceptualizations of like these topics. And so I just took mainly like a bunch of the things that I was teaching at that time and working with clients on and structured them into a couple paragraphs, couple chapters.
Because this book thick, baby. It's more than some paragraphs in there.
People see it and be like, that's a book.
Oh, it's a book. Yeah.
People will be like, oh, are you going to write again? I don't know. But I knew when I put that out that like I wanted to contribute something to the culture. I think that's the beautiful thing about like any sort of like written literature is like when I'm gone, that will still exist. Forever. You know what I mean? So it's something that I love hearing, you know, even though I want everybody to buy their own copy and support, I love hearing that like somebody had it and they was like, oh yeah, my friend took that book. Like I'm still trying to get it back from my homegirl. Like, because that's the beauty of knowledge. Like it's being able to, I think anytime somebody says they shared your book, that's a compliment because they felt so impacted by it that they wanted somebody else to experience it. So,
anytime somebody recommend me a book, I always read it, because if somebody went out of their way to recommend like this book, because they're saying I read it and this book did something for me. The keys is in here. The keys is in here.
I think it's a really high compliment. And so just to touch on a little bit about like what's in the book, the way I wrote it, I call it like half of a textbook, half of a self-help book. It's kind of like a hybrid because it is a book that you can read from cover to cover, but it's also a book where like you can go to any specific chapter that's speaking to you at that time, and you can start there and you can work in that. But we talk about attachment styles because that was the book Attached was the first book that was ever given to me by my therapist. And it changed the trajectory of my life, and I'm still applying things I learned in that book today. Boundaries, because that's so critical. Communication.
I'm drinking this like it got something in it, like it's gonna relieve my
communication styles. I started the book with those three concepts because I believe that they're all interwoven, right? The type of attachment style you have is impactful on the type of boundaries that you set and the way in which you communicate those boundaries. So those I consider like the holy trinity because it's all three of them, baby. And then we get into codependency. There's a concept in there.
You're getting some hot shit.
Look, I tried to really get into it, right?
And people don't be knowing they codependent.
Yeah.
They think it all means just like clingy, and that's not true.
Yeah, no. We get really expansive on what codependency can look like. What else is in there? There's a concept called the reality gap that I learned through acceptance and commitment therapy, and it basically describes the space in which you're struggling with where you thought you'd be and where you actually are, and the emotional distress that you experience from being in that space, and like, how do I move from point A to point B because I always thought I'd be here, but yet I'm here. So that's something that a lot of people struggle with. So that's in there. And then the two biggest influences, our upbringing, our family, how that contributes to who we become, as well as like our experiences in school and how that shapes us, because we know that there are a lot of issues in our education system, and sometimes it enhances people's ability to end up on the right path, whether it be through mentorship, the right teachers, and sometimes it deters them.
You know what I found, that another one that is difficult, and it might be in here because look, this bitch is thick, okay? Is how we shape our own environment now, and I know that goes back into boundaries, but a lot of people don't realize the people we have we have the worst boundaries with the people that we know and love.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's the part, and it's so difficult to make those changes because it's like, you don't know how to stop doing something that you've always allowed people to do. You know what I mean? You don't know how to say, I love this friend, but I don't think I should hang out with them as much because actually like, and we also don't see it. It's hard to see it when you love somebody. And that's the thing. I think even just learn how I communicate and communicating properly. I've learned to say, you know, I can love somebody and still, this isn't the best thing for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I can't, I'm about to read this book. You know, I'm very excited.
And I want to answer a quick question that I know people are going to ask, because we are in the era of technology. It is not it's not an Audible. It is a book. You got to pick it up and you got to read it and you got to flip through it. Like, ain't no electronic form, ain't no quick. Like, and the beauty is, so at the end of each chapter, I have therapeutic related like questions to help you process what you just read and apply it to your own experience. But when you started, like, you know, as far as the book isn't a replacement for therapy, I think it is a great resource to lead you in the direction of like further exploration in therapy. And I think it's a great tool to have when you're in therapy working on some of these things, and right? Visiting. Right, that you can bring to the table, because I have, you know, I've had clients who are like, everything's great, like nothing's going on, and I'm like, well, let me assign you some homework so we can get into something. Let's see what the answers say. And typically that brings stuff out. So like, I think if you've reached a place where maybe you aren't sure what to bring into the therapy room, this is a good resource to use in that, because it'll bring up a lot of different things you can explore with that therapist.
I really like the idea of having something that's tangible that I can revisit, because I fall back into habits, you know what I mean? And it's difficult when the thing is sometimes, you know, you fall back into habits. I think the best advice that we can give is to like get back on it like quickly. Like, don't think that just because you go through therapy and you do all the things that you're never gonna come back to those, you know, come back to certain places. And I think that having something that you can check in with regularly, and, you know, going back to the chapters where you have those weak spots and reading that every now and then, and because now it's top of mind, you know what I'm saying? Like, it don't just talk to somebody, you figure out what it is and then it works. No, you have to choose every time, like, this this feels more natural to me, and actually that's a red flag.
Yeah.
What feels natural you know what I mean? Like, I know for me, like, even when it came to like picking partners or people and friendships and things like that, the things that started to feel so comfortable, I started pausing on, because why does it feel so good? Yeah. And I don't know you, and I don't, you know what I mean? Like, you start having, it helps give you a thought process to properly protect yourself versus thinking that people should have all the ownership to not fuck with you. Like, you have to be able to recognize those things, and how am I choosing? Because at the end of the day, everything that's going on in your life, unless it's not consensual, it's something that you chose or allowed, right? You know? Absolutely. And so playing on that accountability is a huge thing in itself.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy now, and because everybody is so mental health savvy, for people to get caught up intellectualizing their mental health versus like, what do you feel, right? Like, there are so many people who can't really, like, they can explain to you what's going on and how it's right and how it's wrong and how it's healthy and unhealthy. Yeah. But how does it make you feel at the end of the day? And what do you do with those feelings? How do you learn to sit with those feelings?
What do you do with those
feelings? With the feelings, right? Like, how good are you at letting your feelings exist versus feeling like, I gotta do this, you know what I mean? So I think that's sometimes, like, people get up on their high horse when they've been in therapy for so long, and it's like, I know this, and I'm very aware, and blah blah blah, and it's like, I'm going to tell you, as somebody who's in the field and is also someone's client, I still fuck up all the time. I still have to go back to the chapters of my favorite book to set myself straight, to ground myself, to remember what I've been through and what I've learned, because it's easy to fall back into what you've always done.
Absolutely. I feel like, actually, I have no more time for the thing, I feel like, because I want to get into the sex too.
Okay.
I do. So, please, you guys, check the link below so that way you can please support Brittany and this book. All the things, gift it to somebody instead of telling them, you need therapy.
Yes, it's a great gift.
I got you something. What you trying to say? I'm saying I got you something. But the sex tip of the day is to pay homage to Sexual Essentials, which is the first company that I had that helps people create the intimate life that they desire. And I want to discuss with you, Miss Mamas, this no sex for 3 years.
We're at 2.5.
Let's round.
Yeah.
You know what? No, let's not say this. 2024. Who knows? I want to know why, because I do remember that you was telling me that you have not been doing the things, but I would love to understand why. Tell me what's up. What's going on?
I hate having to say that I'm involuntary celibate, because we've now used incel as like a reference to like men who are terrible online to women because they can't get no coochie.
Yes.
But no, I feel like, and again, this is like, I'm finally getting to a place where I can connect the spiritual component to it. Dating got really hard for me over the last couple years. I want to say the last person I'm not going to say that was the last person I was interested in. The last person who I felt like I could grow through something with was maybe in like 2021. But
grow through something with, I love that.
And I think I said, I was trying to say something else, and it just came out like that.
So I was like, not go through, but grow through.
Yeah. Who I felt like equally yoked with, and my anxiety got in the way of that, and it crashed and burned before it could even start, which has been my personal like challenge in the story of my life in dating. But it got out of my hands difficult. Like, you know, before I feel like you have some control over like how your dating life goes, it got to a point where I've been getting ghosted. I've been I had a bunch. I called 2022 the year of the first and last dates, because I would get like first dates and I would think that they would go cool or they would go good, and nothing would come from it. So what started to happen is like these interactions I was having with men that I were meeting, it just wasn't going anywhere. In the strangest way, I've never had a period in my life where my dating life looked the way that it has over the last couple of years, which is like, I just can't get no movement. Like, and people look there like, you're so pretty. Like,
you are.
I know. Like,
talk about it.
And that's what's terrible is like, you know, you get into this space where you don't want to have so much self-awareness where like you cocky, but like I have done the work.
This isn't the problem.
I still have flaws. Like I can say, and that's why I vouch, sometimes for women who are like, I'm not the issue. Like I'm not doing nothing that's necessarily running these men off. Like, especially like the ghost. I get ghosted all the time. It's like,
it's disrespectful.
It's so weird, right? But that's why I said the spiritual component came in, because I started to really tap in with myself to ask, like, what stone have I left unturned? Because I've been doing the work. I love the hell out of myself.
Yeah.
I know my self-worth, but I can't seem to mesh up with anybody where we can really get some movement. And that really comes down to why I haven't had sex. I can't get to the point where sex comes into the picture, right?
She said, because I can't.
Like, that's really... there's
That's
no
real.
other way to put it. And like, guys who know me, they're like, you're great. I know. That's not the question. I can't explain the behavior of what I'm interacting with. And it's not like, I don't think I have a broken picker, right? Because people are like, you're just picking the wrong type of guy. I'm picking all different types of guys. Like,
I've tried them all.
And really, like, I'm past that fun stage, but even sometimes if I entertain the guy who I know like really not for me long term, but like I ain't getting no movement with him either. Like, it's just not.
She said I tried to have
it's
fun.
It's not going anywhere. Like, even now to the point where like before at least I was getting to the first dates. Now I can barely get to the first date. Like, they'll cancel, or again they'll ghost, or something will happen that'll prevent it. We were talking earlier about like signs. I said like Virgos, all I can do is be delusional with a Virgo. I met a Virgo over the summer who I thought was like, ooh, like this is it, right? It got real delusional, but like he was like it got real delusional because he was away for work. So like we like talked up our future and like our meeting, and like everything got so intense for like weeks before we could actually meet. And then that has happened to me before too. But then like we meet and it's a dud. Like the energy, the chemistry isn't the same in person, there. Right? So it's strange, but I finally come to accept, because I used to say that like God had me on punishment. Like, you're just on punishment. You can't have, because it's not even just about the sex. It's the companionship. It's the intimacy. Like, I can't even have a man who smell good like hug me too long before I'm like quivering in my knees. I'm very fragile right now. Like my flesh is weak. Okay. Like,
don't touch me too long.
Like, you can't touch me too long. Like, don't you get too close to my ear. It's just, it's one of them. So like, so yeah, I recently got to a point, probably like in half of last year, where I was like, and I started like really more, I'm not going to say I started going to church. I started watching sermons online, which is new for me.
You stopped getting dick and started going to church.
That's not what I said, Samaya.
I was just trying to. That's why I repeated it. I'm trying to find the.
I had been dickless for like 2 years before then. Before this epiphany came to me. But no, like I just felt like there was something I was missing, something that like my spirituality was calling me to address, and that started with me watching. I started watching sermons. I started just really getting deeper about like what was I missing, and so
No, I'm sorry. Sorry, I get nailed.
One thing I will say that the period of time helped me to tap into was masturbation.
Talk about it.
I was not a self-lover, a self-pleasurer. Probably until I was late in the game, like till like 2020. I'm 32, so that was like I was like 28-ish when I bought my first toy and started to figuring out what worked for me. And to this day, like I know now I can make myself squirt. I've never had a partner who's made me do that. So like I'm learning the magic codes and my solace. And of course I love, like I'm at a place where like I think I could be so much more explorative in sex, and I want the right partner who I can like trust and do that with. So I'm excited for me to get whatever's going on under control so I can like do that. But I will say it gave me the opportunity to explore a part of myself that I may not have had. Like I just continue to have a routine sort of sex partner, and so now I'm a big advocate for it, because I was very like, no, I can't do it like before, and now I just know like, okay, finger play not my thing. The
okay,
toys
baby,
are.
I can't do the acoustic.
Yeah,
I gotta run that thing.
The DJ just, like that ain't my role. But I love me a good rose, baby. The rose to turn me out, turn me loose, turn me upside down. Like I done seen stars, you know. So I appreciate, and I think that's really one of the predominant reasons why, like, I haven't had to go back through no old sex buddy list to like get some, and I realize how much like emotion for me is now tied to sex, right? Like I don't want to just do it to do it. And something I will say for the ladies who've gone like spans of time without it, the longer you go, the more you feel like you have to take breaking it with care. Right, because I could go find anybody to help me bust a nut. Like that's not the issue. Now I feel like I'm a born again virgin, and I have to manage this marinated coochie in a very responsible and strategic way. So like I've had moments where like I done got a little too hot and heavy, but it was with somebody I wasn't supposed to be. So I was like, I can't have sex with you. That's bad coochie management. What I look like doing that? Like I done went 2.5 years. Like that wouldn't be smart. So now I think about it more. Like but we gonna see. We gotta see how much longer it go, because I done definitely posed it to my girlfriends. Like, so would it
I'm
be
about to
bad?
hump one of y'all at the end of the year if y'all just don't give me no dick.
Like, you know, sometimes how you have like really good sexual chemistry with somebody, and it's like,
why you looking at me like that?
I was like,
how safe of a space is
would
this?
I be wrong if I just went with the person I felt deep down in my soul could put it down? Because that's something else happened. So before I went 2.5 years, I went like 8 months twice, and then I went a year, right? And those times.
Hold on.
Look,
I just want to make sure that I have the information correct for the viewers.
For the viewers.
So before you had the 2 years of no sex, there were 2 8-month stints, and then another year stint before that.
So before the 2.5 years, I had it was a year. Before that,
it's almost 5 years of inconsistent sex.
Inconsistent sex. I can't see. It's crazy. I'm still functioning.
I just need a sentence.
Like, right? And that's why I just started to take. I think I hit a point where
in my own hand,
bro. It was like I was trying to be.
She getting frustrated. I'm so sorry. It's not funny.
It's rough. It's rough. But that's why I'm saying, like, now when you start like going through those stretches of time, I don't want to just do it just to do it. Now like I said, I have sat here and considered, like, where I was going with that was in those times that breaking those, the sex didn't sex the way I needed to sex, and that's also disappointing. It's like the person that you pick to break your fast
got you starving,
didn't hit the buttons that needed to be hit. And what sucks about that is because those are the guys that you typically really like personality-wise, compatibility. You feel like you could see a future with them. Like, that's why I decided to have sex with you, because I felt like there was more than just sex here. I felt like we had potential.
That's not a good reason to have sex with somebody.
I felt like we had potential, right? So I felt comfortable taking that route.
No, I think that's fair.
But ultimately, now I've hit a place where I asked my girlfriends, would it make more sense for me to have sex with somebody who I felt like I had crazy sexual chemistry with, that would be more likely to hit versus waiting for like my potential magical husband to show up? So that's still something I go back and forth about.
That's real. I appreciate you sharing that. I think we're gonna tap that off. We got you. I do feel that a lot of times people have sex with somebody because they care about them, and I feel like how you care about somebody and what they could do for that pussy are two different things. Yeah. And I think that it's fair that we have conversations about them separately. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, who you care about and who respects you and who sees you and who you're supposed to be with, those are all different things. Yeah. And so I think trying to figure out, is the person that I have sex with is the person that I need to be with. That's one. And there could be somebody that show up in your life sexually for you over and over and over again, but you have to be able to ask, like, how do you handle pleasure, period? Like, that has nothing to do with us wanting to be together. Like, do you respect my body enough to take your time with it? Do you respect my body enough to come correct? To say, okay, how many times we got to do this to make sure that I finish? Like, those things have nothing to do with liking somebody. To me, that has everything to do with respecting my body. Yeah. That has everything to do with you loving pussy. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are things that I don't want to touch anybody. I had to realize that wanting to have a relationship and wanting to engage with somebody are again separate things. And so really being with a partner or being with somebody that can acknowledge and see you sensually and sexually, ask questions and be curious, it's still different than sexual chemistry, because then you're talking about attraction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that, again, that's not enough. It's the conversations that tell me.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Because
that's huge.
It ain't nothing but a mathematical problem. You do this, you do this, you do this is how it works. That's an effort thing. You know what I'm saying? So I will say definitely ask yourself, does it need to be somebody that you're in a relationship? What do you what are you equating it with? I will say that I could definitely relate to it being difficult to have sex, because at the end of the day, I refuse to have sex with somebody that doesn't respect or desire this pussy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that people don't understand what desire is. I think that people think that they like people enough and they end up having sex. If you gonna have sex, if you want to have sex with somebody from the jump, that doesn't mean that there is desire. You know what I'm saying? And desire means that it's just like eating. If you was hungry all day and you went to your favorite restaurant and they served it to you cold, you wouldn't eat it anyway. You would return it.
Right.
But if you claim that you want this pussy, why the fuck would you eat it cold? Why would you want to go into it cold?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just
building up relationally. I actually I wish I was one of those women who and I think what you're speaking to, is respect is a big part. I think I realize so much of emotion goes into sex with me.
Yeah.
And because I think men don't always know how to care for you emotionally, that makes me hesitant to go there with them physically, right? Because I need to know, even if this isn't relationship status, that you care for me and my emotions, because especially after you go so long without it and then you have sex, I'm going to have a bunch of emotions that I'm sitting with after that.
Oh, damn.
You know? And it could be anything from pleasure to confusion or excitement or just even some, maybe, I don't want to say necessarily regret, but guilt. Because again, this is something I've sat without. So right. So, yeah. And I think meeting someone who can meet me there emotionally it isn't easy to find, you know. Fair. And so sometimes I think it's easier to just sit without versus jumping into something and it's screwing with your head. Because unfortunately now it's when things don't work out with a guy, even if it was short lived, I could say, well, at least I ain't giving no coochie. Something about that is very validating for me. Girl, you shouldn't fuck him.
My rule is I don't hit nothing I can't hit twice. I'm not with one night stands. When I decide to sleep with somebody, I'm deciding to sleep with you. You know.
And the last guy I had sex with in 2021, we only had sex that one time.
Oh no, you got it. You owe me something.
I was pissed.
You gonna have to see me,
because shortly after that, everything just kind of broke down. But I was upset because that was the time I went a year, and I'm like, bro, you went a year to have sex one time? That's crazy.
Coming up with Vaseline.
I damn near didn't even count that time. It don't count. I was like, I'm damn near on year 3, because that don't really count.
And if you ain't make me nutty, damn sure don't count. But you know what? We got to bring you back to the Patreon. Right, okay. Okay. We got to bring you back for the Patreon so we can talk about the sex things. Okay. Before we get up out of here, and thank you for sharing that, because that's mad vulnerable now, but also understand that it's not just you.
Yeah, no. I've been seeing in the comments, the ladies been riding the celibacy train. I'm like, let's stay strong out here, Let it be worth it.
I was about to say, let's stay strong. I need time to break these fast.
I mean, but also not just for the sake of breaking them either. No. You get what I mean?
But I feel that too. I will say that I ain't gonna say that I agree with Joan when she was like, oh, this is my 90-day rule, because you could fuck a nigga on the first date and be with him forever in 90 days and he leave 91.
Yeah.
But I will say that I don't just jump into sex easily. It definitely has to be a desire thing, because after we do it, you gotta want it again. And if
absolutely.
we can,
only the best liquors and dickers should be in the running right now.
Talk about it. Liquors and Dickers is the name of this episode.
Yeah.
Hands down. Before we get up out of here, you touched on it earlier, so we won't spend too much time. Last thing that we do before we let you go is the spiritual tip of the day. And the spiritual tip of the day is because spirituality, like you said, is a huge component to healing. Sometimes it's more than religion. You know what I'm saying? It's tools, it's concepts, it's science. You know what I'm saying? And it's energy. And I think a lot of people kind of are very resistant to it because they don't understand it. There's a level of ignorance that goes with it. And so we just try to break down something spiritual a little bit at a time on each episode, just to give you something to think about from a different perspective. Okay. And it really was that sometimes the thing that you want or the thing that you're looking for doesn't open up for you because you haven't done the thing to get it. So you will never see it. And it's so crazy. And I believe I said this on a different episode, was that some of the things that I have now, there is no way that any of these things would have even come across my path had I not did some of the work. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Had I not said some things out loud. And it's so crazy because sometimes you can say something out loud and the next day the thing I'm like, fuck, I cannot get through this. I cannot get through this. You say something out loud, you feel the release, and then boom, the next day. Yeah. The next day you realize I needed that it wouldn't come without this. Yeah. And so sometimes it's not realizing what you feel before something happened. You got to make sure that after you get that thing, you ask yourself, what happened before this? Go back and reflect. Sometimes we only think when we want something, but after you get it, you need to study that process because that's what life is. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Every time, especially with this goddamn content house. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Anytime I hit a wall, I said it's something else that I need to do. I said, because I know I'm supposed to do this. The vision would not have came to me if it wasn't possible. You cannot tell me this is not what I'm meant to do. Yeah. So anytime I hit a wall, it's because I'm supposed to be at that goddamn wall. Yeah. I haven't got enough bricks yet to get over it. You know what I'm saying? Come on, bricks. Come on, getting over it. I'm just saying, it's just, I know that there is something else that I need to do. I know that there is something else that I need to address. I know recently, and I won't get into it because it's a whole nother conversation, there was a realization that I realized I needed to have. Yeah. And when I realized it and I said it out loud, it took a whole level of guilt off of me. And I'm talking about something from 10 years ago. Wow. 10 years ago, something I didn't even think was a problem. But when I said it, saying it, acknowledging it, made me take guilt off of myself. Mm-hmm. Taking that guilt off of myself meant that I thought I was worthy of other things that I didn't realize that I was holding myself back from. Mm. So it's just after you get what you need, sometimes look back and think, what happened right before this that, Yeah. Yeah.
I'm big on telling people to make sure you keep close to you what works. Because we work towards so much all the time, and some things succeed and some things they fail. Sometimes we leave bad habits behind and develop better ones, and we're in a really good space, and then sometimes we lose our way. And the first thing I tell clients is what was working. Let's not lose that, because sometimes that is just what you need to continue to implement, regardless to what that may look like, or you thinking that you too good for it now, or you don't have to do that. No, we all have systems. Yeah. And if you are spiritually in tune enough, we all get blessed with seeds, right? Mm-hmm. Seeds that are meant for us to foster. This book was a seed that was planted, in the shower, and the title came to me and I knew I couldn't stop thinking about it. So that was what I'll put on top of what you just said, is things that you cannot stop thinking about.
You need to do something about.
That is your spirituality speaking to you about, whether it be the universe, God, whatever it is, your belief system. Something is, you're being pulled towards something for a reason. Yeah. And you do yourself a disservice when you try to quiet or bury those seeds. No, they need to be watered.
Take us out there. Tell the folks where they can find you, Brittany.
You can find me at Bring It Brat, BringitBrat _. And then we have a professional side, which is at Be The Change TS. The book can be purchased. You can find it on Amazon, but I prefer you purchase it through my website, which is www.BeTheChangeTS.org.
And we will drop that link below.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have all the links in my link tree. Link to my YouTubes, link to the book, link to the website, we'll Psychology Today. If you need a Black therapist, please go look at Therapy for Black Girls. Even as a man, if you happen to be watching this, you can find Black women therapists in your area by insurance, by their specialty. The resources are out there. You just got to do a little bit of the footwork to get to them.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing all of this and for doing this work and laying the groundwork. I wish I had something like this when I didn't even know that a bitch needed therapy.
Look, it's the things I wish I knew for a reason. Okay.
Yeah. And you guys, if you've never had therapy, at least start with this book. And I appreciate you guys just for saving space for us. And, you know, if you know somebody that's respectful, you know, from a girl here and to lay her down a good pint.
Okay, the homegirl K Love said that she found her husband from a viral video. So I'm hoping I do enough of these things here.
She said I'm not doing something. She said I gotta do something. I gotta try it.
Put myself out there somehow.
I feel that. I love y'all. Thank y'all so much again, and we will check y'all next week. Bye.